Hello, and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about your why. And the reason I'm starting here is because if you are thinking of becoming a founder, you really need to understand why you're doing it. So your why is going to be your heart as well as your practical needs. Really, it's a combination of those two things. It's nice to focus on the heart part more. And I think that should be your driving motivation because that's what's going to keep you going through challenges, through all of the work part of it, and through the sustainability of doing it long term is really going to be your why. Just like with any job, if you have to go to your job every day because you just need the paycheck, and you don't really love what you're doing, you don't really feel a lot of purpose behind what you're doing, that's hard to do. It's hard to sustain that in the long run. Tons of people have to do it. And sometimes it's just the way life is, and millions of people have to do that. But if you are in a job where you're just working for someone else's gain and, you're collecting your paycheck so you can pay your bills, and it's just not as fulfilling as really loving what you're doing. There's a relatively famous TED Talk by Simon Sinek about your why. Can't remember the exact title. And he talks about a business's why. I think he uses Apple iPads and all of that in their marketing, and how they just marketed differently because they understood the why. So he has this little TED Talk that was quite famous. I think it caught people's attention because when you just hear it spelled out, you're like, oh yeah, if you can identify the why behind why somebody's buying something, because this could be applied to even your families, why would they come to your hybrid school, right? There's a lot of ways you could apply this, but for you, if you're just in the beginning, brainstorming phases of this, what is your why? And second, I think it's handy to set aside the practical things, but then you should bring them in later. When we started our program, our why was very much wanting to deliver a particular type of education to our own children. And we wanted short lessons. We wanted a lot of time outside. We didn't want screens. We didn't want these long days at a desk. We didn't want a lot of academic pressure. We didn't want testing. Instead we wanted to cultivate a love of learning. We wanted a joyful environment. We wanted relationships. We wanted community. That was the why that led us to our philosophy. It led us to choose Charlotte Mason's philosophy. It led to how the schedule worked out. And it really was the driving heart behind working for years with, little to no pay to get things off the ground. It was succeeding, it was growing, which is rewarding. You're watching kids coming and their lives being changed by coming. So of course that's very helpful to keep you going. But why were they coming? Even that was it was just very reassuring to say, well, these kids are coming because for the same reasons that we wanted to build the program. They're coming because they can't find anything else like this for their educational options, right? And that just really helps you keep going. So as I said in the first episode, you also have like a practical part of it. So like, are you just trying to get out of your teaching job so that you can start a business so that you can pay your bills? That's not necessarily bad at all. But sometimes that will cloud your why in there somewhere. Like you get bogged down in the realities of daily life, like we all do. And you're like, I don't know, I just got to get out of, the situation that I'm in, or I need to make some money or whatever. So I think maybe I can start a business. Maybe I can do this. And there's nothing wrong with that, because a worker is, worthy of his wages. That's totally fine. And we all, unfortunately, nobody can set aside the practicalities of life. But if you start there, I just don't think that's the best place to start. Okay. I think that if you're feeling that and you're like, oh no, well, that's me, like, just dig underneath that, because if you're choosing this instead of like just a career change or like going to get some job somewhere else, then it's probably because you do have a heart for education. Like, you do have a heart for children. There's some reason why you want to work with kids. Like or like for me, I do the administration business side of it. Like, and that, but my heart was for the educational model, but I'm more gifted in big picture thinking and strategic thinking and, numbers and all of that. So like I can, and that's all needed in a program. So like, that's the part that I am contributing to creating the program and making it keep going and be sustainable and be financially sound and all of that. So you might be that person, or you might be the teacher, right? But either way, ultimately your heart is for the education and the model and the children and the families, right? So that's probably why you're even listening to this and why you're in the education field. And you probably wouldn't be listening to this if you weren't, if you didn't care, you didn't have some degree of a why about education. But you want to also take that to the next step and say like, well, what part of it is the most important thing to you? Like, are you really excited about the future of, AI in education? Are you like, no, we need to go back to classical. These kids need classical educations. Are you like, oh, I just really want a nature school. I want kids to be outside all day long. Maybe you're just really passionate about supporting homeschool families. Like if you can dig down into like the details of what it is that you really care about personally in a little more detail, like you want to look at it closely and write it down. Like you might be able to like, oh, I can do that. I can grab the back of a napkin right now and I can write down why I want to do this, which is great. But still write it down, because it's good to like, it's really the beginning of your mission statement, like your vision. I should say your mission statement, because a mission statement is a little more like philosophical. It's like, what is your mission? Like, why do you exist? What's your mission in the existence of this program? A vision, I would say a vision is a little more like practical. Like, what's it actually going to look like? So your mission might be to deliver a classical education to elementary children or whatever. Like, that might be your mission, because you just have this why. That's your why. You think that kids are very well educated. You think that kids are very well educated if they get a classical education, and you want to be able to deliver that to the kids, that you want to be able to support families in providing a classical education. That's your mission. Your vision might be to create a 2-day-a-week program for 6th through 12th grade kids in the area or something. Like, you get a little more practical with it. But it's all going to start with your why. Okay. And then, once you've been able to kind of like laser focus on that, you keep that as your informing reason for existing. And then on a more practical standpoint, you might want to step back and say, well, why do I want it to be a hybrid school? Why am I starting it? Like, why is it me who's doing it? Why are you willing to put the work into it? But it's also like just bringing in like a practical aspect. Like, do you need to replace a full-time income? And this is more private, like your mission statement, the why mission part of it might become, it's probably going to be on your website. It might be your mission statement. It might be your tagline, right? It's going to be like forward facing, probably, because it's what's going to draw people to the program. But it's coming from your heart. You're not just making up a marketing tagline or something to get people to come that you don't really care about, because you're not going to be able to deliver on it. It's going to be like a false advertisement if you just throw out there what you think people want to hear, but you don't really care about that. So it's coming from your heart, which is going to allow you to be true to it. And it's also going to show up. It's going to be what informs what your days look like, what your curriculum looks like, what your schedule looks like, how you train your teachers, right? That's the why part that I talked about before. But when you get to like the more practical part, that's going to be the part that informs just the logistics of it. Like, are you able to be on campus 2 or 3 days a week? What is your personal experience background? Do you feel like you can be the director? Usually a founder ends up being a director. Or do you just really want to be a teacher? What is your heart for that part, as well as the practical part of it, right? Do you need to make a full-time income? Are you cool with making a part-time income? Do you have childcare for your children? If you listen to my first episode, I didn't really have a lot of reliable childcare, and I didn't know enough of how much work it was going to be and how much time it was going to be to budget properly for myself. And because I felt responsible for everybody else who was working there, because I was planning the budget, and I was deciding, where the money went, and, researching the salaries and wages and all of that stuff. I was like, well, I have to make sure everybody else gets paid. So if it meant I got shorted, then I felt like that was my responsibility. But that was actually kind of a mistake. In some ways it wasn't, but then it also was, because if you don't look out for yourself, nobody else is going to look out for you. So it's that's just kind of the entrepreneurial risk that you take. You have to kind of take care of yourself. So you have to know the realities of what you're getting into, but also just the realities of the boundaries you have in your personal life. So if you need to be able to pay a babysitter, and you're going to be working 20 hours a week, and you don't have a family member to help you out or whatever, 30 hours a week or something, and you need a babysitter, and they're going to cost you $12 an hour or whatever babysitters cost nowadays, and you need to still bring home some money, then what do you realistically need to be able to earn to work that? Okay. And, I say that, and I've heard people recommend well, how much money do you need to make? Charge based on how much money you need to make. And it's well, yeah, that's part of it, and that's true. But you also have to make sure that your families can pay that. It'd be great if we could charge $10,000 a kid. We have all kinds of money. We could all get paid really well, but then nobody would come, because who's going to pay $10,000 for a 2-day-a-week program, right? So you can start from well, here's what I have to do to make it actually viable, actually sustainable for my family. And now I'm getting into some budget stuff. But then you also have to do your market research to make sure that your market can manage that, whatever it is whatever number you come up with. And I'll talk about budgeting in another episode. But the practical part of why you're doing this, and this is like I said, it's kind of a different take on the why question. It's well, why would I want to do all this work? Why? Why would I want to do all this work? Well, I have this mission. I have this heart. I want to see this happen. Okay, that's wonderful. But why are you doing this? And are you actually able to do this? So I think those are good questions. And like I said in the first episode, I moved, had a third baby, and launched a program all in the same year, and wasn't getting paid at all. So and I did that with somebody else. It wasn't just me, but that's that doesn't make a lot of sense. If I'd sat down and been oh, I think now would be a good time to launch a program and work 30 hours a week, when I'm having a baby and moving. No, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But when you're well, I have this need for my oldest child, and she's approaching school age. I want her to go. She's almost 15 now, and she's been in the school since she was 6. And that was a very driving reason. I also was really enjoying the work. I love the work, even though it was really hard to do around kids and babies and stuff. I loved the work, and I wasn't doing it for the money. I wasn't expecting to make any money at all. But after a couple of years, you're wait, now I got to pay a babysitter to even show up, and I'm paying my babysitter more money than I'm making. It's just not sustainable. So that's why I'm saying take as much as you can. You count your costs before, and you understand what it is that you practically need in your personal life, to be able to make this work. And if you're wondering, like, well, how much time are we talking? Like, when will I get paid? If you plan well and you've validated a market and you plan your budget well, and you're strategizing and you validated your market so that people are actually going to come, you're pretty confident about that, and you've put the right costs into your budget and all of that. By your second year, you can, I think, pretty much expect to be making a decent part-time wage. The first year can be tough. Like you sometimes you have to, unless you really fill all your classes the first year, which can be difficult to do. Sometimes you have to operate really bare bones and like kind of underpay yourself, and maybe, wear a lot of hats the first year. That's like just kind of an entrepreneurial thing you might have to do until you gain some traction as a program. Sometimes that is true. But if you're aware of that's going to happen and you realize like, well, this is the first year, but by the second year, I'm going to be able to have this many kids, this many classes, and, we're going to be at a size that you're heading in the right direction, like you're heading in the right direction. And what that is, what you're shooting for. Like I might have to make $12,000 this year, but by the third year, I'm going to be making 30 or whatever, So that's realistic to do. Again, this is kind of based on like a 5 to 6 class model that's meeting like 2 days a week, where you're like acting as the director. Just some stuff to think about as far as writing out your mission and vision based on your heart for the program, what your passion is for the program, and kind of helping warm your mind up for like what your program would look like. And then just taking practical things into consideration, so that you're like, oh yeah, like I don't know how I would do this. Or yeah, I have some help with this. I could work a day or 2 a week. Like that's going to be fine. As long as I'm making this much money, I can get help with this or whatever. Or maybe that's not an issue for you. Like maybe you haven't made any money in many years, and now your kids are entering school age, which is the case for a lot of stay-at-home moms. And maybe you don't have a baby or a toddler. And so, you got 1 or 2 kids entering school age, and you're like, yeah, I can get this going. And in 2 or 3 years, you're telling me I can have a part-time salary that works with my kids' schedule, doing something that I built myself and that I love doing. Then, that sounds awesome. So like whatever your situation is, like just make sure that you're taking an accurate assessment of that. And I think that that's a really good place to start. And in the next episode, or maybe it won't be the next episode, but in some future soon episode, I would like to talk about a little bit more about how you can look at your own like experience and like your personality and like some of your strengths and weaknesses as far as like, what you're good at, what you're not so good at. And you can also kind of take an assessment of that so that you make sure that you're not putting yourself in an area where you're going to get like frustrated for a long period of time. But you're putting yourself where you're using your strengths so that you're really thriving. Because again, sustainability is what you're shooting for here. Hopefully you can listen to that coming up, and hopefully this was helpful. So go write your mission statement and your why and take an assessment of some of your practical parts of your life. And I will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.